We've now reached a point in One Piece where you can't be top tier unless your powers can quite literally reshape geography itself. And we're gonna kick things off with the complete destruction tier, and this is exactly what it sounds like. These are attacks that could quite literally obliterate an entire reasonably sized island. You know, not just a little battlefield damage or knocking over a castle. No, if this attack hits, the whole island gets packed up and sent to the afterlife. You know, think Ohara, think Lulusia. These are the true nuclear weapons of the One Piece world. And I want to start with my favorites, so let's talk about Galaxy Impact, aka the moment we all kind of realized that, oops, Garp actually is built completely different, even in retirement. Because in chapter 1080, Garp drops into Hachinosu and throws just one punch, just one, and it looks like the entire island flinched. And here's the kicker. I really don't think that was even going all out at this point. This is the man who used to spar with Roger, as we saw, and he had to be holding back here because, duh, he didn't want to obliterate his own old student Kuzan or the people he went there to save, namely Kobe. And he still blasted a super deep hole, destroying an entire town. So I really think that if he had wanted to, he probably could have sent Pirate Island altogether into pirate heaven. But I'm kind of curious what you think. Do you think that Galaxy Impact deserves its place in the top tier here, or should it drop down to the second tier, which is destroys everything on the island? Because in this tier, we have attacks that might not straight up nuke the whole place, but could definitely erase everything that's on the island. And for me, the perfect example of this is Kaido's Flame Bagua. In chapter 1048, Kaido coats his entire dragon body in hellfire and grows to the size of Onigashima itself. And even though we didn't get to see this form do anything crazy besides getting smacked in the face by Luffy, I do like to think that the intense heat from his island-sized flames could do some pretty serious damage. Now, would the Flame Bagua itself obliterate the entire island? Maybe. Maybe not, but would it melt through everything standing on top of it, like villages, forests, your hopes and dreams, your fridge? Absolutely. That's why this attack sits right here in the destroy everything on the entire freaking island tier, and who knows, it might be even stronger. We might just never know. And right below that, we have the destroys most of an island tier, and these are attacks that might not fully wipe an entire island off the map, but we're talking about large-scale moves that could absolutely rip through towns, flatten landscapes, and, you know, leave most of the place completely in ruins. And for me, the perfect example for this tier is Trafalgar Law's Puncture Willie. Great name, because as we saw when he finished off Big Mom, this attack is actually quite massive. Big enough to tear straight through the upper crust of the world into the depths below. So just imagine for a second if he takes this insanely enormous attack and swipes it across an entire island instead of, you know, just straight down. And he kind of did this on Punk Hazard, and that was before he ever even awakened his fruit. So with his current power level, yeah, say goodbye to most of that island. And honestly, if we're putting Law in this tier, then I guess we have to put Kid here as well. But I'm gonna be a little bit controversial, I think, and say that his damned punk is not the most island crushing attack that Kid has, because we saw his true destructive potential in chapter 1030 when he showed us Punk Crash, where he can make anything magnetic and sends ton of metal crashing down towards it. So just imagine for a second that Kid comes back with a power-up. I know, hard to believe, but if he made an entire island magnetic and sent mountains of metal crashing into it, like, yeah, I think that would do some very serious damage as long as he could find enough metal. But to go back to the legendary level, let's talk about the true, undisputed island-destroying weapons in One Piece, the ancient weapons. First, we have Poseidon, who is, at least in part, the mermaid princess Shirahoshi with the power to command the gigantic Sea Kings, you know, these massive sea titan monsters capable of tearing entire islands apart all by themselves. Then we have Uranus, who we all at least think is this flying laser death ray weapon that Imu uses to wipe out Lulusia. And then finally, there's the warship Pluton, which is currently buried under Wano, and this was actually the first ancient weapon we were told had the potential to one-shot an island in the story in general. So this is like the most confirmed case. Next up, we have some heavenly destruction that could rival an ancient weapon with Admiral Fujitora and his bonkers ability to straight up pull down down meteors from space. Like, come on, I feel like sometimes we all forget how insane that ability is. Just imagine Fujitora calling down a whole meteor storm on an island. Like, literally everything would be wiped out, which is why it lands in the destroy everything on an island tier for me. As you can see, this is the second tier, and it's still really crazy strong and impressive. Now, this next one might be a little bit of a shocker though, because even though Doflamingo got taken out by Gear 4th Luffy, which in current One Piece terms is not that impressive, his birdcage ability basically wiped out all of Dressrosa on its own. And if your island doesn't have anything strong to stop the birdcage, well then you're basically just toast, or I guess pasta, string cheese, I don't know. Like, even Zoro couldn't cut through the strings. So there is nothing that you can do to stop the razor sharp strings from just slashing your island to bits, and this ability goes into the destroys most of an island here, because I guess, you know, some of the rubble is still left afterwards, or something might, you know, go through the cracks. Anyways, this next one is basically a freebie because Blackbeard slash Whitebeard's Tremor Fruit is quite literally made to quote-unquote destroy the world. You know, back when Whitebeard was still using it, we saw him split the seas, crack the air itself, and turn Marineford into, well, this, a shattered mess. And then when Blackbeard got the fruit, you knew that we'd be seeing this power that can supposedly destroy the world in full force sometime before the story ends. So yeah, a really easy, complete destruction top tier power right there. Now, to be fair, many of the powers on this list haven't actually been used to try and destroy an entire island. We just know or suspect that they probably can, but we actually can say this about this next power because goal was quite literally to wipe the Sky Islands off the map completely, off the sky map, I guess, because as we saw with this attack, Raigo, the Lightning Man formed a massive ball of pure electric death energy and dropped it straight onto Upper Yards. And the impact of it was kind of like a divine nuke, and it completely vaporized everything it touched. Now, sure, you could say, oh, it only fried a portion of Skypiea, and it was only this powerful after being charged up by the Arc Maxime, but the implication to me is pretty loud and clear. If that fully charged death ball landed on a regular island down on the Blue Sea, it's goodbye island. Poof. Now, if you're worried that this might happen to you and Enel's gonna show up and blast your town off the map, don't worry, you can be protected by joining the official Ohara Patreon. And by doing so, I'll not only send my cat Gojo to beat up Enel for you, but you'll also get access to a ton of top tier perks like monthly bonus artwork, early chapter reactions, bonus content, extra parts of our new podcast, Drink Sake, you know, up to an hour of extra conversations with people like Tekking, Archer, Joey, Gon. So go check it out, and we have a free newsletter that you can join as well if you don't have money or don't want to support but still want to get something there. Alright, but back to the video because we've still got a bunch of island destroying powers to go through here, but one power I had to think really hard about was Elisabello's King Punch. Yeah, if you remember that, you're a real legend. Like, it's a very powerful attack that can take out buildings, but nowhere near strong enough to level entire islands, so this one is an attack that didn't quite make it on the list. But on the other hand, Elisabello's attacks do work perfectly on our next island racker, because next up we have one of Doflamingo's top officers, Pika, and his giant stone golem form. And look, let's be real, Pika doesn't even need a special attack to wreck an entire island because, well, after he goes into his giant stone form, he can just walk around and quite literally demolish most of an island like he's a kid smashing up a Lego set. And by the way, Pika isn't even our biggest character on this list, so let's one-up him with Blackbeard's literal Titanic captain, San Juan Wolf, because with his devil fruit, he can increase his size to the level that he's literally as big as an island and can destroy most of it just by rolling around in his sleep. And if you thought that this is as big as it's gonna get, sadly, you're still wrong, because when it comes to straight up sheer size, nothing beats the massive elephant Zunisha. I mean, don't even need to justify this one. It's as big as an entire island. It has an island on its back. Its trunk could flatten entire cities in one swipe, so if there was ever a creature who could completely straight up destroy an entire island by itself, well, it's this big boy right here. Big girl? Well, I don't know. We'll find out maybe one day. Now, Zunisha has the size, but Luffy truly brings the muscle, and his Bajrangang earns him a spot all the way up in the complete destruction tier. And okay, technically we haven't seen Bajrangang blow up an entire island yet, but let's be honest, right? Like, if Luffy really wanted to with his improved Gear 5th abilities, he could do it. I don't think we need to argue about that one. In chapter 1049, Luffy winds up this Gear 5 monstrosity here and slams it down onto Kaido, and not only does it break through Kaido's infamous defenses, but the dude gets sent into the netherworld through bedrock and into a volcano below the island. The fist is as big as Onigashima, and the entire island would have been destroyed as well if Momo hadn't come in clutch and moved it out of the way. So now just imagine Luffy going all out here, no holding back, no Kaido tanking it, just raw, god tier energy focused on one island. That's why this lands in the complete destruction tier. I mean, this is the guy I believe will destroy the Red Line too, so yeah, an island should be almost child's play for Luffy at this point. But if you want to talk about true power, let me show you the most dangerous man in the series who should have islands quaking in their boots. Buggy the Clown. Yeah, that Buggy. You know, the man who failed his way all the way into becoming a Yonko, because if Buggy truly awakened his Chop Chop fruit powers, then it would be over for islands everywhere. Which, okay, it's kind of a gag, but the logic actually holds up when you really think about it. Because if Buggy can chop up the environment like he can chop up his own body, then in theory, he could just straight up slice an entire island right in half, which is just crazy to talk about Buggy having this type of power, but with everything else done in the story, I would not be surprised, and it's been speculated a lot before that Buggy's power and his devil fruit is somehow special like Luffy's, and I still like the idea that something like the weird mountain that split on God Valley could be due to Buggy's power being used by someone else. But now we're gonna double dip with this next one because it's time for Fleet Admiral Akainu and former Admiral Kuzan to crash the party. And we're of course including both of them here because they both showed off their island wiping powers at their legendary duel during the time skip, and these two didn't just demolish an island, they straight up went and terraformed it by making it half a volcanic hellscape and half icy wasteland. Which, at least in my books, does certainly count for destroying everything on an island, I would argue. I hope you agree. And fairly enough, you could argue even that they should be in the top tier here, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but so far we haven't seen complete island destroying powers from them, so we're gonna leave them in the destroys everything on the island tier for now. Not that that's a bad spot to be in, right? Okay, but this next one I know is gonna be the attack I'm gonna get the most comments about because, oh man, okay, I don't know if I should do this. Okay, but you know, let's just go with it. All right, screw it. Roger and Shanks's legendary attack, Divine Departure, goes right off the list. And look, this attack is busted. We don't need to talk about it. It can one-shot reasonably strong characters like Kid, but just hear me out. We haven't seen it have the, massive wide-scale range damage that would be required for this particular video here. We're talking about destroying islands, not just focusing a ton of power on a singular point and opponent. And look, I'm sure they both could level an entire island if they really wanted to, but the fact is we just have not seen that power of them yet. But I mean, if you want to prove me wrong in the next few chapters, Oda, I'm very down for it to be proven wrong here, and please show me Shanks or Roger destroying an entire island. That'd be sick. All right, if that wasn't toxic enough for you yet, let's now dive full into the worst debate in the One Piece community, because unlike Shanks, his famous rival Mihawk, for me, is making the list absolutely. Because look, in Marineford, we saw that Mihawk casually slices through a freaking ice mountain, so with that kind of casual power, we can at least say that he could destroy most of an island easily with a very serious sword swing. All right, okay, there it is. It's out. Mihawk over Shanks for this video at least. Don't hate me, or do, I guess that's fine. Anyways, let's talk about something else. Like, no, look, there's Shiki up on the complete destruction tier. Huh, now you might be thinking, what? How is that possible? But let me remind you about Shiki's actual powers. This man has eaten the float fruit, which lets him make anything he touches float, and as we saw in the Strong World movie, this man can make entire islands float. So even though that movie isn't canon, yes, Shiki and his powers very much are, so I do think we can very responsibly say that if he wanted to, he could make a small island or at least some massive rocks float and send them crashing down to destroy any other old island that he wanted to. But enough with the speculations for now. This next attack we have seen wipe out everything on an island in the story canonically, because we're talking about the world government's Buster Call, which delivered the death blow to the island of Ohara with a massive barrage of cannon fire. hits me every time. Now, what's most scary is that the world government could do this anytime they want to. Even a very idiotic character like Spandam here, remember Spandam, can trigger a Buster Call and wipe an entire government island out, because once it starts, there is no stopping it, which is why it lands and it destroys everything on an island here very comfortably. But there is another man in the world government who I think can wipe out most of an island by himself, and that is none other than the Golden Buddha himself, Sengoku. Because as we saw in Marineford, when he goes all giant and golden, he can unleash powerful shockwaves that could completely wreck an entire place. And since realistically he was very much holding back because he didn't want to destroy Marineford and all his own soldiers, I bet that a full powered shockwave would obliterate most of a small island easily. Which now brings us to a real Yonko level threat and the most recent character to join this list, because Loki and his crazy super hammer Ragnir could 100% completely destroy an island easily. I mean, I'm still kind of shocked every time I look at this panel and I see the lightning strike that Loki brought down on Elbaf. Like, what the hell, dude? This thing is massive, because you gotta remember the crazy scale of Elbaf, and this lightning bolt is basically the size of a regular island all by itself. So just imagine this thing hitting some place like Ohara or some other random small island like, I don't know, Whiskey Peak. That place would just be a smoking pile of ashes afterwards, and I'm pretty sure that this wasn't even close to Loki going all out anyway. So yeah, to me, no doubt that this attack deserves its place in the complete destruction tier. Which honestly, quick aside, just makes me so incredibly hyped to see what an all-out clash between Loki and his hated rival Shanks will look like. I mean, can you imagine the sheer hockey aura coming off of these two? And their reunion might very well change the course of the story, but there are also 4 characters in One Piece so powerful, they could probably even threaten to destroy the world itself if they haven't already in the past, and those are the 4 gods: the sea god, the sun god, the earth god, and the forest god, who I think are very much at this point confirmed to be real characters in the story. And if you want to know what we know about them and who they were, you can watch that video right here. Very relevant to know their power. And otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks to all of our fantastic Patreons right here. Thanks, Vin, for the help. And I will see you in the next video. Let me know what I forgot also, of course.